What's going on, folks? Mike Singer and Mason Plummer here from blueandgold.com with this week's weekly recruiting wrap. Got 4 topics to discuss in the world of Notre Dame football recruiting. Before we dive into it, want to make sure that you guys hit the thumbs up on this video. It helps support our channel. Subscribe to the channel for more Notre Dame football, recruiting, basketball content. And of course, if you like what we do on our YouTube page here, you can go to blueandgold.com and get that kind of content, premium content that you can't even find on our YouTube channel over there. You get that 2 months free when you use promo code Irish60.
Mike, not a ton of new news, but potentially a small update on Notre Dame's most recent quarterback offer, Ty Simpson, the 4-star quarterback out of Tennessee. Notre Dame's not looking likely for him. It's going to come down to likely Clemson and Alabama. Mike, what are your thoughts here? And it looks like Notre Dame might be sticking to their original 2 targets in Angeli and Wimsatt.
Yeah, Rivals.com's Chad Simmons posted an article on Thursday. I believe he went up to Tennessee and sat down with Simpson, again, who Notre Dame just offered here recently. And Simpson said the hats that were going to be on the table and Notre Dame was not included. So really shouldn't be a big surprise there. I was a little bit surprised by what was kind of out there, with people saying that Notre Dame was maybe more in the mix than I would have anticipated. And so it's really not a surprise. So you likely have Simpson come off the board. Steve Angeli, Gavin Wimsatt, 2 quarterbacks, who I've been saying for a long time since Notre Dame offered back in August, look really good for. I mean, I put in the FutureCast pick for Notre Dame to land Angeli the morning after he got the offer. Still feel like the betting favorite is probably him to land as Notre Dame's quarterback in the 2022 class. Wimsatt, Notre Dame might lead in that recruitment as well. He hasn't visited though, so look for him to maybe get up on campus soon, whether that's for a typical recruiting visit. I'm not too sure about that because it looks like this dead period's about to get extended through the end of May. But he might take a self-guided tour, and if that's the case, he might fall in love with Notre Dame and pull the trigger. So you have Angeli, you have Wimsatt. Does Notre Dame offer some more quarterbacks too? I know that's something we've been keeping an eye on, Mason.
Yeah, Drew Allar is a quarterback I think that Notre Dame should have probably offered by now. I think they probably should have offered Simpson earlier as well. I think Notre Dame will likely offer him once Simpson's officially off the table. We'll see what happens there. I still really like Angeli and Wimsatt, but there is a potential chance that they don't land either of them. So why not offer a third and just have 3 horses in the race essentially and keep your options open? I think that's more likely than not going to happen in the next couple weeks or so. Mike, what are your thoughts on that?
I think Allar makes sense for that next quarterback offer if they go that route. MJ Morris from Atlanta, a teammate of Jaden Thomas. I mean, there's still a lot of good quarterbacks out there. So if you're a Notre Dame fan, you're like, oh, man, we don't have our quarterback yet. Like, yeah, I do think Notre Dame would have landed a quarterback commitment like a year ago if this were a normal recruiting cycle. But it hasn't been a normal recruiting cycle, and there are still a ton of really talented quarterbacks out there. So I wouldn't fret just yet, Notre Dame fans. On Thursday afternoon, Jake Taylor, 4-star offensive lineman from Las Vegas, Bishop Gorman, where former Notre Dame special teamer and defensive back Nico Fertitta coaches right now in the secondary. Jake Taylor tweeted that he had a virtual visit with the Irish staff the previous night, so this would have been Wednesday. Heavy hitters on this call, Mason. Head coach Brian Kelly, offensive line coach Jeff Quinn, offensive coordinator Tommy Rees, and recruiting coordinator Brian Polian. So Notre Dame has Ty Chan committed, Joey Tanona in the class. We feel good about the Irish's chances still with Billy Schrouth, an interior offensive lineman. And then, Tanona's also an interior guy. Chan we feel is an edge guy. So Taylor would be another tackle to join Chan if Notre Dame were able to land him. How are you feeling about this recruitment, Mason, and where Notre Dame's at?
I really like Notre Dame's chances. I think taking him on that virtual tour is a big step. I saw somebody say it's like laying out the red carpet, and I think that's an important step in moving forward in Taylor's recruitment. I think Notre Dame, it's a deep offensive line class, and Taylor's near the top of the list for Notre Dame, along with Schrouth that you mentioned. So I think it's likely that Notre Dame takes maybe 4, maybe 5, 6 offensive linemen, and they've already got 2 of them committed. Schrouth looks likely for Notre Dame with Wisconsin in the mix still, and then Taylor looks like a Notre Dame lead. I know, Mike, you put in a future cast pick for him a while ago. You really like Notre Dame's chances here,
Yeah, I kind of the thing I'm really wanting to see is if he makes it out to Notre Dame, if he's able to
right?
take that self-guided tour, because he's been to Oklahoma. If he makes a decision, would he pick Notre Dame without seeing campus? But he's been to Oklahoma, a school that he really likes.
Mike, we got 4 notable offers here. Some big time targets at big time positions of need. Some really interesting ones. Holden Stays, the Penn State decommitment. That's the biggest one for me. But what are your thoughts on these 4 offers here?
Notre Dame's not going to land all four of them because I only see them landing one more tight end in the class. But these four prospects all have like a realistic shot Notre Dame has with them. So you look at the two tight ends, Stays and Raritan. I put in a future cast pick for Notre Dame to land Raritan on Thursday. It just makes so much sense. Notre Dame's going to be pushing for him. His dad, Scott Raritan, played at Notre Dame 17 years ago, 18 years ago. And Scott Raritan became a father when he was 19 years old and still at Notre Dame. So now Eli has that same opportunity. Scott Raritan Sr., strength coach at Notre Dame, spent a few years in South Bend and was a part of Notre Dame's national championship team as a strength and conditioning coach. So that just makes a ton of sense. Holden Stays, I spoke to, and we'll have an article up on him on Friday at blueandgold.com. He's also very interested in Notre Dame, friends with Notre Dame signee in the 2021 class, Kari G, and has heard a lot of good things about Notre Dame. Also, the tight end tradition at Notre Dame, specifically in the state of Georgia, Mason. I mean, Tommy Tremble, Kane Barong, Jack Nickel, all these guys for Notre Dame in
Yeah,
Georgia.
continuing to build that Georgia pipeline, I think, is something that Notre Dame needs to continue to work on. You mentioned those guys. Kyle Hamilton's another one that comes to mind out of the state of Georgia. Stays is a monster. I've been watching some film, and it's very rare that he's not doubled. And that's a tight end. Like, that's not a receiver. He's getting doubled off the line of scrimmage. So that's crazy to me. He's a stud, and he's proved it. He recently decommitted from Penn State. And then Raritan, like you mentioned, the 3 stars, but he's just as good as Holden Stays. I believe the upside with him is off the charts, and then it makes sense. And I'm not old by any means, but the picture of of him with Brady Quinn and his father made me feel old. That's just crazy that we're getting to that point. I know a lot of people on the message board kind of share that same sentiment as well.
Yeah, a couple more offers to cover from the Northeast. Addison Copeland received an offer from Notre Dame and then decommitted from Rutgers. Yeah, so former Rutgers commit here. And then got to feel good about Notre Dame's chances there, but he's just now starting to blow up. So Notre Dame got in early on that recruitment. Jaden Bellamy, we talked about Steve Angeli earlier. This is Bellamy's, or Steve Angeli and Bellamy are teammates at Bergen Catholic in North Jersey. This is a guy who's a corner safety. And if that doesn't work out, he could be a really good receiver too. So Bellamy visited campus. I believe it was the Boston College game back in 2019. Irish staff has been just continuing to evaluate him and offered him on Wednesday. So notable offers again. I see from this list, I really could see them landing Raritan. I think Copeland, you contemplating a future cast pick and also considering a future cast pick for Notre Dame to land Jaden Bellamy. I mean, these 4 offers, guys, wanted to pop these on the screen so you can see them. All very notable for Notre Dame.
So, Mike, do you think it's likely that Notre Dame lands, Stays, or Raritan? Do you think it's going to be one of these 2 to pair along with Nickel for the tight end positions in the 2022 class?
I think it's Raritan. Um, if it prolongs, the recruitment kind of drags on, and Notre Dame's like, hey, maybe we don't get them, then I could see them expand the board. But for now, at least a couple of weeks, I expect Notre Dame, unless they just find someone they love, to really zero in on Raritan and Stays. Look for Notre Dame to be on some virtual visits with both of these guys in the upcoming week. And last but not least is Notre Dame making the top 3 for 4-star linebacker Joshua Burnham from Michigan. Mason, linebacker recruiting for Notre Dame has been impressive. The groundwork that Clark Leah Niklasinski laid several months ago is starting to come into fruition now with Marcus Freeman coming in and really busting his tail. and Josh Burnham is one of his top targets.
Yeah, Mike, I'm glad you said that because I think a lot of credit is going to go to Marcus Freeman where when this class ends up being finished. And a lot of it will be due credit, but I think it's important to realize what Clark Lee did with this in the past year or two, as well as Nick Lazinski, and really, like you said, laying the groundwork and getting the initial contact in with these guys and letting them know about Notre Dame and piquing that interest initially. And now it's looking like Marcus Freeman is coming in and trying to finish the job, especially here with Burnham. It looks like a Notre Dame and Michigan race to me, Mike. Wisconsin's still in the picture, kind of got some ground to make up. I like Notre Dame here. Michigan's gonna be tough to beat though. In-state Michigan, he's from the Traverse City area. We'll see what happens as we move on here. We don't know. I don't know exactly when his commitment date is, or if he's established one yet. But it's gonna be a two-horse race here from now, I believe. See if Notre Dame can pull away here. We've seen Marcus Freeman win some battles already. See if he pulls out another one.
Yeah, and I just want to reiterate, Notre Dame loves Joshua Burnham. They're recruiting him very hard, and Lazinski and Freeman have done a really nice job here. Story on him on blueandgold.com was published on Thursday, where he did mention that it might that top three might even be more of a top two,
Right.
like you mentioned there, Mason. That's gonna do it for this week's recruiting wrap. Appreciate you guys sticking to the end here. Please go ahead and hit a thumbs up on the video to support the channel. Leave a comment. Which recruits do you really like that we talked about this week? Tell us what you want to see in future videos. And make sure you're subscribed to blueandgold.com and our YouTube page here. You guys have a nice and safe weekend.